Next up, we are very excited to introduce Representative Bob Latta from Ohio to do some opening remarks on accelerating clean energy innovation. Representative Latta is from Ohio's 5th District. Yes, I know there are more than just 5 districts in this country, but we're doing the Oregon's 5th and Ohio's 5th today. Representative Latta serves on the prestigious House Energy and Commerce Committee. I also found out that he has served on every subcommittee, which I think is a very unique qualifier, and as a member of the Energy, Climate, and Grid Security Subcommittee currently. He understands the important role American innovation plays in bolstering our energy security and lowering global emissions. So Representative Latta, it's good to see you again 2 weeks in a row. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much for having me, and I know that for some of us today, it's kind of another one of these days that they keep changing our vote times, and we have the CR up, and they're probably going to call votes here in about another 5 to 8 minutes. But first of all, I think what you have here is how American innovation increases competition, drives down industrial emissions. I think that's important because, first of all, the United States industries don't get enough credit. You go back to 2005 to 2020, this country reduced emissions more than any place else in the world. And you think about what's happening in communist China today or India, and the emissions are going up. And in communist China, right now they're looking at probably putting on 100 coal-fired plants in the near future. So what we're doing here in this country is absolutely important. But again, because just by what you talk about, that for increases competition. A little background. My district has 86,000 manufacturing jobs. I have the largest farm income reducing district in the state of Ohio. I say this, I have to have affordable energy. It's not energy I need, I have to have affordable energy because again, to make sure that people can get out and do their jobs every day and that the factories and businesses stay open, that energy has to be affordable because you've got to compete. And I have small companies that I visit that may have only 10 employees that they're exporting. But they're exporting because they're competitive. But if you lose that competitive edge, you're done. And one of the things about being on the Energy and Commerce Committee that's so important is this. When you sit on the dais, you're looking over the horizon 5 to 10 years. And when you look over that horizon 5 to 10 years, we want to make sure of this, that we're not hurting the innovators and the entrepreneurs out there that are bringing the new technologies on and online in the near future, that they can innovate here in this country. Because again, we can't, if you put the wrong laws in place and then the regulations that follow, we've got a problem and we can't compete. So that's what we have to always remember about. What you have up here again is on that competition and drives down industrial emissions. We're doing it in this country. And it's also important because, I come from northern Ohio. If you go back to 2014, we had a polar vortex that went across the Midwest. And I mean, it got cold. And when I mean cold, it got cold. And it just happened to be a work period and I was back in the district. But at that time, with my steel companies and my float glass and all the companies out there that could not shut down, it was absolutely essential that the power stayed on. And during that time, we did not have a blackout or a brownout in the state of Ohio. But since that time, I've been and back up one step. That's also because every power station in the state of Ohio was at maximum, and we didn't lose power at that time. But PJM, which is our regional, I ask them every year the same question. If we had the same situation that we had in 2014, what would happen? Every year I heard this, no problem, we can take care of it. No problem, we can take care of it. This year I heard this, well, maybe we'd be okay into 2026, maybe. If you go to their website, one of their bullet points says, what we have to have in this country is more energy. And if you ever come to an Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Energy hearing, and we have witnesses before us talking about energy in general, I ask everybody the exact same question. Do we have to have more power or less power in this country? We've got to have more power. And when you look at what's happening right now across, not only this region, but across the country, but look at the data centers. When these data centers that are coming online, it's predicted that they're going to take between 4.5 to 8, or 4.5 to 6% more power, potentially up to 8% more power next year. That's not on existing power, that's on power that's going to be needed on top of what we already have. So this innovation has to occur as to how we're going to do it. And when you think about some of the innovation from advanced nuclear and carbon capture and natural gas backed renewables, again, that's driving down emissions. But again, as I said, we're leading the world when it comes to global competition. But when I look at what we have to have out there, and again, I'm very, very fortunate. I know as soon as I leave Washington to start the October work period, I'm going to be across Ohio, going through so many businesses also across the country. But as I said, when you think about having to have more power on top of what we already have, where's it going to come from? And so that's where I said is the innovators and the entrepreneurs out there are going to have to make sure we get there. The other point is that when you think about where the EPA, who comes up with some of these regulations, or a lot of the regulations, last year in committee, I asked them a very simple question. If the Biden administration would go forward with and somehow get it implemented, we're all going to be driving renewable by 2035. And right off the bat, I'm going to say this. I don't care what the American people drive. It's up to the American people. The federal government should not dictate to the American people what they do drive. But I asked, how much more power are we going to have just for that? They said 4.5%. We're getting estimates right off the bat on that. It'd be over 50%. So it worries me about when you think about how somebody comes up with these numbers that they put on companies out there that are almost impossible to meet. So it's important that we always remember we've got to compete out there. And it's important that we always remember that everything that we're producing out there is that we're going to have more power. And that more power, again, as I mentioned, when you think about from advanced nuclear, and we have so many great things that are going to be occurring. I'm not going to say could be occurring, that are going to be occurring in the next 5 to 6 years. But the United States has to lead, and so again, it's making sure that we also do something out there on our permitting. It takes so long to get something done in this country that and then the lawsuits that follow, or lawsuits that come at the very end, that try to hold up projects. We can't do that. I don't care, and I spoke to a group this morning, a tech group, but one of the things that I've never heard from any area that we have jurisdiction over in the Energy and Commerce Committee is this. I've never had any company or any business or any person ever say we're against regulations. They just say this: give us regulations we can live with. And that's so important that, again, because again, if you put the roadblocks up there, we're not going to be able to progress. We're not going to have the power. But again, when you think about the power that we're going to have, this is massive. And so, the United States can lead on this and will lead on it if we have the right laws and the regulations in place. And let me say this just in closing. I'm very fortunate, but I've been on the Energy and Commerce Committee since 2010. In the next Congress, I'll be the most senior ranking Republican on the committee, but my door is always open. I can't do my job unless I have people come in and see me or see my staff, but a lot of times I want people in my office. So if you have any ideas and thoughts, please contact me, because we want you in the office. We want to be talking with you, because again, to craft good legislation, it takes everybody at the table. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank you for what you're doing out there to make sure that we do have the energy that will be there for the future. And it's also going to be energy out there that we can say, that is leading the world. Because again, as I said, that when you look on American industries from 2005 to 2020, just those statistics alone, that the United States reduced emissions more than any other country across the globe. So thanks very much for allowing me to be with you all today, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Well, we hope you have a productive October work period. I love that term. Next up, we are going to have some exciting remarks from Dr. Avi Shultz. Dr. Shultz is the director of the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization, where he leads the administration's strategies to accelerate innovation and adopt cost-effective technologies. Dr. Avi, welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. I am very excited to be here and talk to you a bit about what we are doing on industrial efficiency and decarbonization at the Department of Energy. Since the American Industrial Revolution, the industrial sector has been the key driver of growth in our economy and for the prosperity of the American people. Today, the manufacturing sector creates more than 13 million stable, well-paying American jobs and is a powerful economic multiplier. Every dollar spent in manufacturing generates almost $3 to the overall U.S. economy. But the U.S. is right now in the beginnings of a major industrial transformation. We are at a critical inflection point where we can no longer afford for industrial emissions and for their effect on our health, well-being, and environment to grow along with the sector's economic output. The industrial sector accounts for 38% of our greenhouse gas emissions across our economy. And as we grow the sector to sharpen our competitive edge and keep pace with global markets, the annual emissions it creates are also projected to grow by almost 30% by 2050. As Secretary of Energy Granholm often says, the industrial sector creates the products we can't live without with the emissions we can no longer live with. Decarbonizing the industrial sector presents a vital opportunity to not only transform industrial systems, but to improve the air and water quality for healthier communities and create more well-paying jobs for Americans across the country. Historically, DOE's Advanced Manufacturing Office supported research to advance American competitiveness. As the manufacturing sector and its needs evolved, so was our structure. In 2022, we reorganized into two offices, each coming at this challenge from a different angle. The Advanced Manufacturing and Materials Technology Office, my colleagues, improved the sector's ability to produce clean energy technologies, from making better, lower-cost wind turbine blades to securing our U.S. supply chain of lithium for EV batteries. The office I lead, the Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office, or IEDO, invests in the technologies for industrial emissions reductions and more effective energy utilization. As the world transitions to a cleaner, more sustainable future, markets for low-carbon steel, aluminum, cement, and chemicals are starting to emerge. For the first time ever, we're seeing major companies like Ford and General Motors committing to buying at least 10% of their steel as low-carbon steel by 2030. And this trend toward low-carbon industrial products isn't just emerging within our own borders. We're also seeing demand emerge globally, particularly in European markets. And so at IEDO, we're working to innovate our way to new industrial technologies that can help the U.S. industrial sector capitalize on this opportunity and lead on the global stage. Transformations start with innovation, and we know that significant innovation will be needed to decarbonize the industrial sector. More than 60% of heavy industry emissions reductions needed to achieve net zero by 2050 will come from technologies that are still in the innovation pipeline and are not yet currently market ready. We're working to advance these ideas through research, development, and pilot scale demonstrations. In the last 2 years alone, my office has invested $500 million in new projects focused on accelerating the maturity of these innovations to decrease emissions and increase energy efficiency across U.S. industry. Our investments span both industry-specific technologies to decarbonize our highest emitting sectors and cross-sector technologies like low-carbon sources of heat, including renewable fuels, or thermal technologies like nuclear, geothermal, solar thermal, and others that can be deployed across industries. And these technology solutions that we're working on won't just reduce emissions. A core tenet of our vision is that this industrial transformation is an opportunity to reduce energy use, cut operating costs, and help manufacturers streamline their processes. In fact, if these technologies don't achieve these benefits, we know that they will not be adopted. For example, DOE has had a long partnership with the US steel industry that has helped pave the way for American companies to become among the world's most energy-efficient, competitive steelmakers. Over the last 10 years, IEDO supported the development of an integrated virtual blast furnace that leverages the high-performance computing to allow operators to reduce their energy by an average of 10%. Today, IEDO projects are investing directly in technologies with the potential to continue to significantly reduce the industry's carbon emissions and meet the emerging demand for low-carbon steel. Technologies like next-generation electric arc furnaces and alternative low-carbon fuel sources for heat. And we know the story doesn't end with these novel technologies within the steel mill. The industrial transformation will require critical infrastructure solutions beyond the plant bounds. Electrifying industrial processes, for example, will be a key part of achieving our emissions reduction targets. That's why IEDO created a $70 million Manufacturing USA Institute laser-focused on electrification solutions last year, the Electrified Processes for Industry Without Carbon Institute, or EPICS-C. But we also need to think about the grid and how it can support increased industrial loads as part of this strategy, as we were just hearing from Representative Latta. To that end, IEDO is investing in on-site energy and energy storage solutions through our on-site energy technical assistance program and an upcoming $5 million energy storage prize. These investments can help manufacturers generate and store electricity and heat directly at their facilities, saving them money and giving them greater control and flexibility over the availability of energy and how it gets integrated into their processes. We know that investments in R&D alone won't be enough to tip the scales. We also need big investments on the demonstration and deployment side. Through our Industrial Demonstrations Program, DOE is investing billions, with a B, of dollars in large-scale validation of industrial decarbonization technologies. These investments will drive commercialization and unlock tens of billions of dollars in private investment to set the nation on a course to hit our critical long-term objectives. Additionally, as I think you'll hear about on the upcoming panel, DOE's Loan Programs Office supports critical financing to scale deployment of technologies and overcome the final hurdles of wide-scale use on our nation's factory floors. Before I close, I want to talk briefly about what's coming next for DOE's industrial program. DOE's Industrial Decarbonization Roadmap, which we released 2 years ago in 2022, identified the technology development opportunities and actionable steps industry can take to reduce emissions across the nation's most energy-intensive sectors. We're building on that analytical foundation to chart a detailed course of how we're going to pursue multiple pathways in parallel to decarbonize the industrial sector. And I'll emphasize that the course we're laying out will include multiple pathways. Given the complexity of the industrial sector, there are no silver bullets here. We'll need to implement many different solutions across each industry to reach our goals. We're developing a new holistic vision study. We're calling it Pathways for U.S. Industrial Transformations, Unlocking American Innovation, which will identify cost-effective and industry-specific strategic pathways to achieve a thriving U.S. industrial sector with net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. It will address the technological, economic, societal, and environmental and health impacts associated with the scale and the pace of an industrial transformation. And it will present strategies, targeted pathways, metrics, and targets for overcoming challenges and barriers both inside industrial systems and beyond the plant bounds. Refining this strategy will ensure we are on the right path to a competitive manufacturing sector, good-paying jobs, and healthy communities. I look forward to sharing these results with you in the next few months and continuing the conversation about how best to support industrial and economic growth. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shultz. And we're going to be very innovative here and close out with our best panel of the day. So I'd like to welcome to the stage the panelists for our conversation on how American innovation increases competition and drives down industrial emissions. And to start us off in that conversation, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Griffith, the founder and CEO of Cleaner Tomorrow. Welcome.
Hi, folks. Hi, everyone. Yes, best for last. We're excited to talk with an incredible group of speakers. Let's try that again. Excited to have a great group of experts here to talk to us about industrial manufacturing, clean energy competitiveness, and what's one of the most interesting areas of clean energy right now from my perspective. Now, I'm a little biased. As it was introduced, I am the founder and CEO of Clean Tomorrow. Very excited to be here with all of you. We've got an incredible panel, and we know it's the end of the day. So we want to go ahead and get right into the discussion. We're going to start off. You can see the speakers above me. I'm not going to introduce them. They need no introduction, but I'm going to jump straight to a question for one of our most lauded speakers, former Congresswoman Comstock. Clean energy and climate change is an issue that, as you know, the perspective of the Republican Party has really shifted on this issue over the years. Crest Forum did a poll where 67% of millennial GOP voters want to see policy and government action on climate change. Can you tell us about this shift? You have been a leader on this issue and in Congress, and would love to hear your perspective, and particularly how you think this issue of competitiveness and energy fits into that.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be with you. Well, I think you've heard it from a lot of your speakers today, and a lot of the people, the governors who declared, Clean Energy Week, people like Governor Stitt, and then my former colleague, Chairman Frank Lucas, who chairs the Science Committee. They're really talking about innovation instead of regulation. And so I think I was really pleased when I saw Governor Stitt. He spoke to the Council on Foreign Relations of all of the above energy being a national security issue. And he was bragging about Oklahoma, because people really think of Oklahoma being oil and gas, which of course it still is. It's, I believe, 5th and 6th on oil and gas, but it's also number 2 on, on wind and renewables. And so this is really a growing market for them. So they've realized, and I think states sometimes are an area. I was in the State House before I was in Congress, and states have to balance their budget. So they often realize, in promoting things, that this is a great way to expand their opportunities. He's been going overseas, talking to all kinds of ambassadors, the governor has, and I think you're going to hear from Governor Kemp tomorrow. I imagine he'll talk in the same framework. So I do think you have some really creative governors who've done this, as well as the members of Congress you've heard from. And one of the examples that I had when I was in the State House before I was in Congress, I worked with data centers a lot, and we realized, the data centers certainly realized you have to have all kinds of energy to power them. And looking forward with AI being something that obviously the U.S. wants to lead the world on AI. And if we don't lead the world in AI, it's a national security threat as well as a technology threat. So, and the data centers are what's going to power that. And so the data centers have been, whether it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, and others, they've been the leaders on using renewable energy too. And again, to use Governor Stitt, and actually my Governor Youngkin has also done this in Virginia. But Governor Stitt pointed out how Google has the largest data center in Oklahoma because of their use of wind energy and how much that has grown, and that's something that they've used. And what the data centers do when they go in is they also put out contracts for renewable energy. So that's another opportunity for businesses when the data centers are there. So I do think, I know at the state level, they often see it, this is Republicans see this is jobs. This is, great opportunities to grow the economy. And so you don't have to it's not scarcity when we think of climate change versus, not climate change. If we have abundance of energy, we can have a growing economy and we can still be the most competitive in the world on, and certainly be energy independent, but also be the most competitive in the world on all the things that we care about.
Thank you. A fantastic starting point. I want to ask you now, Phil, about the role that the Loan Program Office has been playing in this space. Energy is one of the largest costs faced by heavy manufacturing in this country. So can you tell us about the role of the Loan Programs Office, what types of investments you're looking at to, change that financial narrative and provide clean energy solutions and also, increase U.S. competitiveness?
Yeah, absolutely, happy to. Sorry, yep, there you go, okay. So you heard Dr. Shultz just right before we sat down share with you a little bit about the landscape of offices across the DOE enterprise. And I would tell you the Loan Programs Office is probably the most exciting place to be because where we operate is at that point of commercial deployment. So for an application to get through our process, we need to see at least what we refer to as technology readiness level 8. So it's already been sort of commercially deployed. There are other offices across the DOE enterprise that are important parts of that life cycle or that development for innovations where we will be making grants, through ARPA-E or through the manufacturing energy supply chain. But when an applicant has actually proven its technology and is ready to commercialize, the Loan Programs Office is that partner for commercially led, private sector led, and government enabled support. And so that's why I think we're in such a critical role to really drive towards the manufacturing sort of future in clean energy. It's because we're putting billions of dollars of federal support thoughtfully behind these technologies that are really ready to make a difference. A great example of this is was a loan that we just moved to conditional commitment for the applicant Q-Cells. Q-Cells is a solar manufacturing that is a first of its kind vertical manufacturing that has from the ingot development to wafer production to actual panel production in a single location. These are products that we had to rely on, Southeast Asia or China to provide previously. And so as we think about the national security imperative of really becoming energy independent, our office is in that position to really help drive some of those results. So again, it's a really exciting place to be.
Fantastic, thank you. Richard, I want to ask you about the role that you see the natural gas sector playing in innovation in the energy economy going forward. In American manufacturing, we are trying to reduce emissions, but what are the opportunities and obstacles that we're going to face on the energy side? And what are you all at AGA working on?
Thank you for that. AGA, the American Gas Association, we're here in Washington, D.C. We represent the investor-owned gas utilities, those companies that deliver natural gas to homes and businesses in all 50 states. And in all 50 states, we're thinking about the commercial sector, the industrial sector, how innovation drives growth across our economy. When we talk about innovation, we're in the midst of probably one of the most important energy innovations in our lifetime. That's the growth of shale gas, these extractive technologies that have made previously uncommercial resources now into, honestly, an energy transforming, a globally energy transforming dynamic. So I have 5 key messages with that being said, and then I'll unpack a couple of these before we continue the conversation. First, natural gas has been critical to U.S. manufacturing competitiveness and economic security, and I would say, building on the comments earlier, by extension, our national security as well. Energy demand, second message, energy demand is expected to increase significantly from these manufacturing investments. If you look at manufacturing construction expenditures annualized, it's gone up 3x since 2020. That's because of COVID and the lessons learned in terms of reshoring. Businesses are bringing back the investment here. We're fixing our supply chains as well. Third message is that there is a growing consensus that natural gas will continue to play a key role in meeting those rising energy requirements. This consensus extends across a lot of stakeholders. You've got Wall Street, our regulators, industry analysts. They're all pointing to a persistent and immediate need for more energy, with natural gas being a crucial component. Next, to compete to effectively compete on the global economic stage, especially with countries like China, the U.S. has to deploy all of its advantages, including energy. Natural gas is a key part of that advantage, and that advantage not only extends to an economic advantage, but to an environmental comparative advantage as well. I mean, if you're going to make a widget, it's better to use Texas gas than Chinese coal. Finally, if we're going to do all of this, we're going to need policy and technology to leverage the full strategic value of natural gas here in the U.S. That's probably enough for now. I can unpack some of that as we go.
I want to pick up on something that you raised and take this back to the rest of the panel, and maybe first to you, Richard, to ask you to say more about this. But, you know, increasing industrial manufacturing capacity and competitiveness in the United States hasn't always been thought of as something that we could do while also reducing emissions. Can you talk more about how you see that trajectory? You know, this is a new sort of era that we're in where clean energy and clean solutions are going to win out. So I would love to know more about your perspective on that, and how can we continue to innovate to be cleaner while also being competitive? I know you've started that in your remarks, but would love to hear more.
So natural gas production since 2005 is up 110%. Consumption is up 79%. Prices today, very affordable, globally speaking, and even historically speaking in the United States. Today, in the power sector alone, natural gas is a 43% share. That's up from about 20% 2 decades ago. Natural gas is the single largest factor for reducing our greenhouse gas emissions across the power sector, and therefore, by extension, our entire U.S. energy economy. That's in combination with increased efficiency and renewables, which natural gas also supports the deployment of. 189 million Americans use natural gas today. That's 35 million more people than voted in the last election. So this is a broad-based constituency that we are supporting. And then to the point about innovation, the low energy prices here at home are linked to manufacturing competitiveness. And so we're seeing that reshoring, we're seeing that manufacturing investment, particularly in strategic industries. So let's talk about that. The semiconductor fabricators, EV manufacturing. And by the way, those semiconductor fabs then get put in boxes and use a lot of energy for all of our data centers. By April 2024, more than $450 billion in actual and planned investments just in semiconductors and EV manufacturing alone. That's going to require a significant amount of energy. That is innovation at scale. Now, there's more that needs to be done. Natural gas, it's not just about today and how natural gas is going to support the growth today, but also in the future. And so we need those innovations, those policies to support new technologies that can include carbon capture and sequestration, both at the industrial sector and at power plants, and increasingly in buildings as well. There's a lot of pilot projects we could talk about. And also the growth in renewable fuels. So this includes hydrogen, renewable natural gas. One of my pet projects here is methanated hydrogen. Come see me about that afterwards. These are critical sectors that are going to support other innovations that I think we've heard about, including electric technologies and so forth, that are going to continue to allow the U.S. to leverage its strategic economic and environmental comparative advantage.
Phil, I'd love to get your perspective, especially within the LPO portfolio. Are you seeing innovative projects that really are allowing us to double down on U.S. manufacturing capacity and competitiveness while also reducing emissions?
Absolutely, and that's quite frankly by design, right? So one of the criteria for actually applying to the Loan Program Office is, for most of our programs, is to actually show an innovation. But it goes well beyond that, right? So we're making these investments across the market. And we don't, in the Loan Program Office, really pick winners and losers in some sense. We're open to any innovative applicant that comes to us. And if you look at our monthly activity report for our applications, you'll see that our applications cut across almost every clean tech sector. And each of those have innovations, and each of them are vying for this investment, this taxpayer investment, to really put jobs, put people to work, create jobs in America, often with attracting investment from other countries, often creating jobs where they didn't otherwise exist. And one of the things that we are committed to is actually making sure that all of our communities benefit from this energy transition. And so one of our requirements is a community jobs justice program that actually then also has an investment strategy by organization, by application for how they'll be using union labor, how they'll be investing in those communities. And it's important to think about this not just sort of as a social program, but as a risk mitigation strategy, right? How are they accessing the talent that they'll need? Many of these investments are happening in communities that aren't co-located with a rich labor market. And so how those innovators are thinking about the long-term success of their project is a partnership that we bring to those applications. And again, that just is a way that we're helping them to buy down some of those implementation risks. The Loan Program Office is positioned to be in partnership with our applicants through the life of those loans. So we don't just make the loan and then resell it like what may happen to someone's mortgage. We know that long-term investment is something that our taxpayers are making and that we're committed to ensuring is a success. And so that's why we have a real risk viewpoint for how we're approaching that lending.
Thanks for that. Before I hand it back to Barbara for a word on this question, I want to let you all know we're going to open it up. If you have the app, we're going to welcome you to submit questions that way, and we're going to have a staffer from CRESS go ahead and offer those up for you. So please go ahead, and if you have a question for our panel on this topic, go ahead and submit your questions now. But I'll give it back to you, Barbara, on this question of how the U.S. can be a leader in so many ways in this space, on national security, on economic competitiveness, on reducing emissions. How do you see those things coming together in this space going forward?
Well, I think they really do, and it's geopolitically, it makes us more secure. You think about as we're making decisions with our allies, whether it's in the Mideast or in Taiwan or Ukraine, we don't have to make them based on energy. If we have this type of abundance and we're going to say, okay, we can't do something against a certain country because they're giving us oil or whatever, the way things might have been before. And now we can be exporters also, which allows us, geopolitically to find more friends and allies. As we know, China has become a bigger threat. Obviously, Russia's been a threat. And then as we move into the AI space, again, geopolitically, this energy abundance that the all of the above strategy gives us really makes us safer and more secure. And that's why I think you see leaders on the Hill. I think of people like Senator Todd Young, who is very involved in the CHIPS Act, who's very involved in AI now. He's also somebody very active on national security. I was just over in Australia, and I was actually reading something about when he was in Taiwan and was also referencing some, the whole geopolitical strategy. And he was really tying this together. He really sees the big picture on it, and it's very much interrelated. So I think, we're really at a critical stage right now. But it's exciting because I do think Republicans in particular, whether it's governors or senators or members, they're seeing how it helps them here domestically, but also helps and strengthens us abroad.
Fantastic. Do we have questions from the audience? No? Sure.
Hello, Conrad LaJoy with the Niskanen Center. So this is actually a question for Richard. You mentioned some of the developments and innovation that are going on within the natural gas industry to reduce emissions. Would you mind just talking a little bit about what some of the near-term innovations are and how you can see those impacts for reduction of emissions?
So one way the U.S. is improving its environmental advantage vis-a-vis natural gas is the reduction of methane emissions. And we can talk about innovations across the entire value chain from the wellhead. I'm going to focus closer on the pipelines that are closer to the customer because that's who we represent. And there, we have a tremendous story, probably one that many other sectors would like to boast for themselves. Since 1990, the natural gas utility sector has reduced its greenhouse gas footprint by 70%. So that's methane and CO2 emissions from operations down 70% over that time. And that's despite that we're serving, I think it's 25 million new customers and all of the pipes and services to support those customers. So the footprint of the system's getting bigger, the physical footprint's getting bigger, the environmental footprint's been shrinking. But we're not staying static here. And to your question, what we're seeing today is a lot of innovation and technology that's facilitating that next generation or next round or next tier of emissions reductions. And let me give you an example. There are companies now that have satellite services, and we have gas utilities that are working with these providers to get aerial shots of their service territory and then really drill into those pictures, and you run the algorithms and the computer models, and you figure out, well, we've got some emissions here, and some of them are going to be spurious. Some of them are going to be, that's the landfill over there and not necessarily connected to the natural gas system. But what this has enabled is it's another layer of visibility into system operations that allow those activities that have already been underway for decades around leak detection and repair, going around and finding where those leaks are, finding those hazardous leaks or even non-hazardous leaks and replacing them and fixing them immediately, but now having even more data at hand to operationalize and accelerate those improvements. And so now it's not just taking pictures of your system, but connecting it to the folks on the ground that are responsible for finding and fixing and repairing those leaks. That means tremendous improvements for accelerating safety and reliability, but also improves the environmental profile vis-a-vis methane reductions on the system. So that's one key way that we're, in our corner of the energy world, that we're supporting those environmental improvements. And of course, if we're connected to that industrial customer, that means cleaner natural gas. And let me say one more thing on this. Sometimes those satellites pick up emissions from the customer side. So now we can work with customers to help them improve their physical footprint on their site as well. So there's a lot of opportunity space in terms of the innovations here.
I think we have time for one more question, if there is another question from the audience. If not, then I'll take moderator's prerogative and ask a final question. Heavy industry is a growing source of emissions in the United States. By 2035, it will be the largest economic sector that has high emissions in the United States. When you think about where we could be on the solutions to this issue, whether it's along the supply chain or along transport of natural gas, new projects and interest from heavy industry in loans and government support, or simply trying to knit together the politics to get us the solutions that we're going to need. I just love a quick word from each of you, maybe to close us out, on how you think we're actually going to make industry not only one of the most competitive parts of our economy, but also one of that is leading on this clean energy story. So maybe I'll start with Phil, come back to you, Richard, and then we'll end with Barbara.
Well, So what strikes me, I've been with the Loan Program Office for just about a year, and what strikes me is how much can get done when you tap into the American innovative spirit and the American capacity, quite frankly, to make money, to operate successfully as a business. And where the Loan Program Office helps spark that collaboration through initiatives like the liftoff reports that I didn't get a chance to mention, but we have invested in this sort of cross market engagement where we're bringing thought leaders together with Department of Energy and other federal leaders together to really constructively think about what is the future of this market and how do we get to decarbonization. That's real work that's going to pay dividends. And those dialogues are available on our website. They're consolidated into reports, but it's just that. It's a dialogue that continues, and it's a commitment to continue to collaborate and find those solutions. And I think it's that American spirit of innovation and commitment to finding that solution that's really going to help drive us. And as I think this is my last word, I'll also do a shameless plug for our Deploy 24 conference coming up in December. I hope that many of you can join us for that. We'll have some of those dialogues happening real time at that conference, but it's also a great place to explore some of these very solutions that we're thinking about. So thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Richard?
You know, our members are working with their customers. Many of the customers, you know, a third are industrial customers, or by volume. And, you know, they're looking not only for, you know, low-cost fuel and reliable fuel, which really matters. I mean, and it matters for these semiconductor fabricators that are, I mean, these are gigawatt-scale facilities that are going to need 24/7 power, right? So it's got to be safe, it's got to be reliable, it's got to be affordable. But they're looking for increasingly low-carbon energy solutions. And those solutions need to not be in conflict with the other three things that I mentioned either. And that's a challenge in some cases. And so what our members are doing today is learning about what those needs are going to be. We have a lot of partnerships, not just at AGA, but across the energy industry to accelerate those next generation of technologies so that they are available, not just next year, but in 5 and 10 years. I mentioned hydrogen. I mentioned methanated hydrogen. There's fuels and other end-use solutions that are going to be critical. I want to note the Loan Program Office supported one of these facilities that are, you know, pushing the edge on innovation here. There's a manufacturing plant, I believe, up in Nebraska. They take natural gas, they split the hydrogen from the carbon. You have black carbon that you can then use in useful products like tires, and then you have a clean source of hydrogen that can be utilized and repurposed as well. So just to show you a little connective tissue here up on stage about how our members are engaged, the role of the fuel and the role of the infrastructure in helping drive innovation in our industrial space.
Thank you.
Well, I guess two things on the congressional front. They can always help on the research and development side, you know, the science committee that Frank Lucas was on and that I was on, you know, making sure that we are investing. And also, I mean, listen, our companies are investing more than the government is, but making sure those investments sort of complement. And so always hearing and, you know, having discussions about where the government's investment is the most advantageous. And then secondly, lifetime learning, because obviously you're going to need the workforce to be able to be the leaders in all of these fields. So upskilling the workers and, you know, having the, you know, the programmers that, you know, that could do all the machine learning and the data science. And those are just exciting opportunities again. And I know in so many of these areas, again, on the state level, they often will make sure these companies are partnering with their colleges, with their community colleges, even with their high schools. So you're getting kids at a young age excited about these new opportunities in future jobs. So.
Well, thank you all for sticking with us through this panel, but I'd love to give our panelists a big round of applause and a thank you. Thank you for your remarks today. And yeah, thank you over to Heather.
Marvelous. Thank you, Lindsay, Phil, Barbara, and Richard.